going into cities and locating these rival hitmen, these rival people or rival drug lords, and taking them out.
A new video from a cartel in the US has just surfaced, and it's not what anyone expected. After keeping their operations hidden for so long, they're finally stepping into the light to reveal their true intentions. But it's what they're planning to do next that could change everything. Let's break it down. A shocking message from the cartels. An unexpected reaction from the cartels emerged when they were officially labeled as foreign terrorist organizations by the US government. On January 20th, 2025, Donald Trump signed Executive Order 12157, directing the designation of certain international cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. By February 20th, 2025, the State Department had named 8 such groups, including the notorious Sinaloa Cartel and Jalisco New Generation Cartel, among others. In an unprecedented move, journalists ventured into cartel-dominated regions to get their reactions. What they discovered was more calculated and chilling than anyone anticipated.
Yeah, so I went to a border region where some members of organized crime spoke with me, and they're responsible for a significant amount of the trafficking and human smuggling operations.
The setting was surreal, reporters sitting across from men who control territories larger than many European countries, discussing a designation that could authorize drone strikes and special forces operations. Yet the cartel members approached these interviews with business-like composure, not as individuals whose organizations had just been placed on the same list as ISIS and Al-Qaeda.
So I asked them, what do you think about Trump calling you and the people you work with and your networks terrorists? And how is this going to impact you?
Rather than expressing outrage or denial, the cartel members engaged in what could only be described as a philosophical debate about the nature of terrorism itself. Their arguments were sophisticated, their reasoning strategic, and their confidence absolutely chilling.
And we are not terrorists, because there is a demand for our product. There are drug addicts all across the United States who want what we have to sell. How are we terrorizing them? We're not, literally, they're telling me we're not like ISIS or the Taliban bombing innocent people.
This wasn't denial, it was a fundamental reframing of their entire operation. In their minds, they weren't terrorists engaging in ideological violence or random attacks on civilians. They were businessmen operating in an illegal market, responding to consumer demand. The distinction they drew wasn't arbitrary. It was a carefully constructed narrative that allowed them to maintain their self-image while justifying continued operations. Most concerning was their confidence in simply waiting out the Trump administration. The pragmatic calculation they revealed was sophisticated and disturbing.
And if this designation means that we have to hold off for a little while in order to protect our networks, that's exactly what we will do.
This response revealed how these organizations view their longevity. They weren't seeing the terrorist designation as an existential threat requiring fundamental operational changes. Instead, they viewed it as a temporary inconvenience to be weathered until political winds shifted or enforcement priorities changed. The language of holding off for a little while suggested organizations with deep strategic thinking and long-term planning capabilities. Now, the cartel's confidence wasn't built on wishful thinking. It was based on cold assessment of economic realities and their own adaptive capabilities. As one journalist noted, cartel members believed their operations would continue despite the designation because of persistent demand for drugs. This wasn't arrogance. It was understanding of market forces that have proven remarkably consistent despite decades of law enforcement pressure. The most disturbing aspect of their response was reserved for questions about potential military action. When asked about US Special Forces operations or drone strikes, the veneer of business-like pragmatism gave way to something much darker.
And they said that if American Special Forces lay their feet on Mexican soil, they will fight till the death because they will have nothing to lose. They will put up a fight. Will they win that fight? No. But they won't go down without a fight because that's all they have.
This wasn't bravado or empty threats. It was a clear statement of intent from organizations that have built their entire identity around violence and territorial control. The acknowledgement that they couldn't win a direct military confrontation with the United States didn't translate into surrender. Instead, it represented a promise of costly resistance that could have devastating consequences for both sides. What made their response even more chilling was the depth of loyalty and indoctrination within these organizations, extending far beyond the leadership level.
To the very bottom.
To the very bottom.
Oh, even the local
street
drug
corner.
dealer. Yes, the guy who's a lookout, who's making pennies.
The willingness to fight, according to cartel members, extended all the way down to the lowest levels of their organizations. The lookouts, the street-level dealers, the foot soldiers who make minimal money but have been indoctrinated into viewing themselves as part of something larger and more important than their individual circumstances. This loyalty, despite economic hardship, reveals the true power of psychological control mechanisms that cartels have developed. Even when money becomes scarce, members continue working for the organizations.
When I was in Sinaloa covering this fighting in the fall, the money flow was interrupted for, all levels of people working in it for the cartels. And so main people who, it's like that necessary job that makes no money are the punteros, the lookouts, the guys on their dirt bikes who watch if Mexican forces are coming. Those guys make the least amount of money. They're making around $500 a month.
Even when these lowest-level operatives couldn't afford food, stealing from delivery drivers to survive, they remained loyal to the cartels. This wasn't just about economic relationships, it was about something much deeper and more psychologically complex.
Because at that point, it's not just about the money, it's indoctrination. It's about being a part of something, feeling powerful, feeling like you've been validated and accepted by the very people who are responsible for thousands of deaths and the war on drugs.
This psychological aspect of cartel operations, the way they create loyalty and identity among their members, represents perhaps the most significant challenge for any military or law enforcement response. These aren't just criminal organizations held together by money and fear. They're quasi-military structures with deep cultural roots and powerful psychological bonds that make them remarkably resilient to external pressure. The cultural infrastructure that supports this loyalty is equally sophisticated. Cartel leaders have achieved almost mythical status in many communities, with their influence extending far beyond their immediate organizations.
And the people in charge are treated like gods. They are absolutely praised as if they are the one and only. I mean, that's why we see all the songs about El Mencho, El Chapo, El Mayo. And you can literally go to Sinaloa and buy narco merch. You got the hat with whoever's face on it.
This cultural dimension reveals organizations that have successfully embedded themselves into the social fabric of their territories. They're not just criminal enterprises operating in the shadows. They're cultural phenomena that inspire loyalty and admiration even among people who don't directly work for them. The recruitment potential this creates is staggering. When cartel leaders are treated like celebrities and their lifestyle is glamorized through music, merchandise, and social media, it becomes much easier to convince young people to join their organizations.
So if you're telling this 17-year-old kid who has always wanted to be in this lifestyle, you're gonna die for me and American forces are coming in, he'll stand up. He'll probably shit his pants, but he'll do it.
This willingness to fight and die for cartel leaders, even among teenagers who understand the risks, demonstrates the depth of psychological manipulation these organizations employ. They've created a system where death in service to the cartel is seen as honorable, even heroic. The consensus among cartel members was remarkably consistent across different organizations and regions. Whether speaking to members of the Sinaloa cartel, Jalisco New Generation, or other groups, the responses remained fundamentally the same.
And based on what I've been told, whether that's what I was told at the border, whether I go and ask in Sinaloa or Jalisco or Michoacan or Guerrero, the consensus remains the same. And the people in charge are treated like gods.
This consistency suggests that the cartel response to Trump's terrorist designation wasn't improvised or reactive. It was the product of sophisticated strategic thinking that had been developed over years of dealing with government pressure. But while the cartels prepared for a long fight, the United States and Mexico were preparing for something unprecedented, a coordinated military campaign unlike anything seen before. America and Mexico unite, the war against the cartels. On March 15, 2025, the United States and Mexico launched the largest coordinated anti-cartel military operation in history. Operation Take Back America combined U.S. Special Forces, intelligence agencies, and 9,000 active duty troops with Mexico's deployment of 10,000 soldiers in an unprecedented joint campaign that treated cartels as enemy combatants rather than criminals. The war had officially begun, with both nations committing military assets on a scale typically reserved for international conflicts, fundamentally changing the nature of the fight against organized crime. Military experts and special operations veterans immediately recognized the implications of this escalation. The terrorist designation had legally transformed cartels from law enforcement targets into military objectives, opening pathways for actions previously reserved for foreign battlefields.
Okay, so is that the smartest way to accomplish that is to say, okay, we're going to designate these guys as terrorist groups, and now we're going to use American special operations and the full brunt of all of our nation's intelligence agencies, our SIGINT, our COMINT, our HUMINT, the full brunt of the way that we would attack ISIS or Al-Qaeda or whoever overseas, is we're going to put that same kind of pressure on them.
The comparison to ISIS wasn't rhetorical. Military planners were literally applying counter-terrorism strategies developed in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria to the cartel problem. This meant drone strikes, financial warfare, cyber operations, and human intelligence networks that had previously been reserved for foreign terrorist organizations. But seasoned operators warned that this approach carried unprecedented risks. Unlike ISIS or Al-Qaeda, Mexican cartels operate just across an undefended border, with resources that rival or exceed many terrorist organizations. These groups are extraordinarily well-funded, often possessing better equipment and more sophisticated logistics than traditional terrorist organizations.
But you do have to realize the mess that's going to come out of that, because those guys aren't chumps. They're at least as well-funded, if not considerably better funded than terrorist organizations, right? They're also a lot closer.
The proximity factor created strategic challenges that military planners had never faced before. Previous counter-terrorism operations were conducted thousands of miles from American soil, with oceans providing natural barriers. Mexican cartels could literally walk across the border, bringing any conflict directly into American communities. Military analysts warned that attacking cartels without securing the border first could trigger exactly the kind of asymmetric warfare that had proven so challenging in Afghanistan and Iraq, but this time on American soil. The Afghan-Pakistan border became the cautionary example. When pressure was applied in one area, insurgents simply moved across the border to regroup and launch new attacks.
Because while that's open, if you attack them, right, it's like cockroaches. You look at Afghanistan-Pakistan border as a classic example. What happened? Well, they went to Pakistan. What's going to happen? You start attacking them there. Where do you think they're going to go?
They just keep, they're
going to fucking come here.
Right.
And they're going to come here and they're going to bring the fight.
The implications were terrifying for domestic security. Military experts warned of potential retaliation against American officials and infrastructure that could dwarf any previous terrorist threat. The prospect of cartel assassination teams targeting U.S. congressmen, federal agents, and their families represented a nightmare scenario that the country had never faced from organized crime. Despite these warnings, the joint operation achieved immediate results. Record-breaking seizures included over 44 million fentanyl pills and 64,000 pounds of methamphetamine, demonstrating the effectiveness of coordinated military pressure. Military experts advocated for a negotiation-first approach, recognizing that cartels respond to power but might be willing to bargain if presented with overwhelming force. The strategy involved direct communication with cartel leadership, presenting them with a stark choice: cease operations voluntarily or face the full brunt of American military power.
Like if I was Trump, I would contact not just the Mexican president. I mean, I would find a way to reach out to cartel leadership and say, look, we can go this route if you guys want. It's going to be bad for both of us. Or you guys can police your own and stop bringing shit across.
The human cost provided moral justification for unprecedented action. Over 100,000 Americans were dying annually from drug overdoses, a casualty rate that exceeded most military conflicts and natural disasters combined. This represented a genuine national catastrophe that dwarfed the death tolls from hurricanes, wildfires, and other disasters that typically prompted federal emergency responses.
I mean, when there's six figures, 100,000 people overdosing annually on drugs, that is a natural catastrophe. That's bigger than, if you look at the hurricane damage and the wildfire damage, and there's not even close to those kinds of numbers of American citizens dying from it. So
the diplomatic strategy combined cooperation incentives with explicit threats of military action. Mexico faced a stark choice: increase anti-cartel efforts or face American military intervention on Mexican soil. U.S. negotiators made clear that while they preferred cooperation, Mexico's sovereignty would not protect cartel operations if the Mexican government proved unable or unwilling to act decisively. Military planners warned against oversimplified solutions solutions, noting that previous decapitation strategies had often backfired by creating power vacuums filled by even more violent organizations. The Pablo Escobar precedent demonstrated that killing cartel leaders didn't end the cocaine trade. It merely created opportunities for new, often more brutal organizations to fill the gap. The ultimate weapon in America's arsenal was the threat of total military commitment, moving beyond law enforcement to full-scale warfare. This included coordinated airstrikes, special forces raids, and sustained military campaigns on the scale of major international conflicts. The message to Mexico was unambiguous. Either address the cartel problem internally or face American bombers targeting cartel infrastructure on Mexican soil.
But with what you're allowing to come into our country right now, we will start bombing the shit out of your country if you don't fix it. So pick one.
Right.
You know, you can either go after the cartel and try to police your own, or you can expect F-18s to be bombing the dog shit out of your country for the next 2 years.
Some experts warned that the cartel problem was evolving beyond traditional criminal organizations into something more dangerous, paramilitary groups with political ambitions. The new generation of cartels was adopting military structures and territorial control strategies that resembled insurgent groups more than traditional criminal organizations. These groups operated training camps, recruited systematically, and increasingly challenged government authority directly, rather than simply avoiding it.
The escalation of a simple ragtag group of cartel guys enforcing a region to an actual cohesive paramilitary group, now trying to vie for control, not just of the drug routes, but also of the populace and the confidence that the populace has in them. So it could turn political at some point, right?
Military experts predicted that the conflict would eventually require American ground forces, regardless of Mexican cooperation. The fundamental challenge was that Mexican government institutions were compromised at every level, making traditional cooperation impossible. Each new Mexican administration brought different priorities and corruption networks, requiring constant renegotiation of agreements that were never fully honored.
That's where we're headed. The problem, and again, another of the problems is that the government is part of the problem. So you can go down there and negotiate with this government, but 6 years later, it's going to be another government.
And you got to renegotiate with them.
Yeah, and also
with new palm grease.
Yeah, and then you put all your faith in the military, and the military gets compromised. You put all the faith in the Mexican Marines, and then they get compromised.
The joint campaign achieved dramatic results. Mexico transferred 29 prominent cartel figures to U.S. custody, bypassing traditional extradition processes. A 24% decline in U.S. overdose deaths was reported, suggesting the military pressure was working. But as external military pressure intensified, it was creating an even more brutal war within the cartels themselves, one that would reveal the true horror of how these organizations maintain control over their members. Inside the machine, the brutal psychology that keeps cartels alive. As military pressure from the joint US-Mexico campaign intensified, it exposed the internal machinery that holds cartel organizations together, a sophisticated system of psychological control, systematic brutalization, and institutional corruption that transforms ordinary people into killers and ensures absolute loyalty through terror. Former cartel members, speaking from the safety of exile or retirement, revealed how these organizations function as psychological warfare machines designed to break human beings and rebuild them as expendable weapons. Their testimonies paint a picture of industrial-scale violence and manipulation that explains why cartels remain resilient despite unprecedented external pressure. The recruitment process reveals organizations that have perfected the art of creating killers from children using techniques that go far beyond simple criminal initiation. Former cartel members describe systematic psychological breaking that ensures absolute loyalty and eliminates any possibility of return to normal society.
I was going on 13 years old the first time I took a life. It's just one day, got invited to Mexico. I didn't know what was going on at first. And I see about 6 people kneeling down. Then the individual, the person in charge, they start laughing. And I think they saw that scared, panicked look in my face and asked me if I had ever killed somebody.
This wasn't random violence, it was calculated psychological manipulation designed to create irreversible transformation. By forcing children to commit murder as their first act of membership, cartels ensure their recruits can never return to legitimate society or cooperate with law enforcement without implicating themselves in capital crimes. The systematic nature of this initiation serves multiple purposes. It creates psychological dependency, ensures silence, and establishes the cartel as the only source of protection from legal consequences. The training methods techniques used by cartels reveal military-level sophistication combined with systematic dehumanization that serves multiple purposes, creating effective killers while ensuring complete psychological dependency on the organization.
Well, the training I received, it's almost all the same, but you don't practice with paper targets. It's a constant war zone. You practice with live targets. I mean, I know it sounds harsh saying it this way, but it's just the way it is.
The use of human beings as target practice represents complete dehumanization that serves dual purposes, improving marksmanship while ensuring trainees become psychologically capable of viewing other humans as disposable objects. These training sessions often involve dozens or even hundreds of captives, creating an industrial scale of violence that desensitizes recruits to mass killing. The systematic nature of cartel violence extends beyond training to include psychological warfare designed to create terror among both enemies and potential recruits. These aren't random acts of brutality. They're carefully orchestrated demonstrations of power that serve recruitment, intimidation, and organizational bonding purposes.
And there was scenarios that there's a house. They throw them in there. They tell them, look, man, if you can make it out of here alive, we'll give you your freedom. So these people, they're fighting for their lives. They throw you in there.
The transformation of American gang members who cross into Mexico reveals how quickly exposure to cartel culture can complete the psychological breaking process that American street gangs only begin. The level of violence in Mexico represents a quantum leap from even the most brutal American street crime, involving systematic torture, mass killings, and psychological warfare that would be unimaginable in most first world contexts.
It's a whole different world, and the violence that the human being is able to do is really unthinkable, you know? Basically, they were doing worse things that we could never imagine in a first world country. And it's more because of poverty, you know? Of not trying to become something of themselves, making a name for themselves.
Former cartel members describe a professional approach to violence that treats killing as skilled labor, requiring specific techniques and maintaining operational security standards. This professionalization of murder includes strict rules about drug use, tactical training, and operational procedures that mirror military or intelligence organizations. The economic structure of cartels reveals sophisticated understanding of human psychology, using both material incentives and social status to maintain loyalty even among members who receive minimal financial compensation. Many cartel members lack basic education and legitimate economic opportunities, making the cartel their only pathway to social advancement and financial security.
You can say in a way it is, because obviously a lot of the people that I met in the cartels didn't even finish their primary school, you know, because they didn't have the resources to look for a better education. In a part it is, you know, in a part it's not. It's more about the influence that society gives them, you know.
The constant fear that permeates cartel life serves as both a control mechanism and a bonding experience that creates artificial family structures among members who know their survival depends entirely on the organization. This fear isn't just of external threats. It extends to constant vigilance against betrayal from within the organization, creating a paranoid environment where trust is impossible but mutual dependence is absolute.
Were you ever scared for your life?
Every day. That's how you live. Anybody that says that they're not scared of that type of life is probably lying, you know. I think being scared is very important in order for you to keep yourself alive. Every time that I would get close to somebody, that person would get murdered, and it was just a circle that was not ending.
The prison system, rather than providing rehabilitation or punishment, becomes another tool for cartel control and expansion. Mexican prisons are essentially cartel-controlled territories where the organizations can continue operating with minimal government interference. The level of corruption extends from guards to administrators, creating institutions that serve cartel interests rather than justice.
A lot of people think that correctional officers are the ones that are in charge inside. They are not. The ones that are in charge are the inmates and the cartel that runs the prison system. Because for every prison that there is a cartel behind it.
Inside Mexican prisons, cartels operate parallel governmental structures complete with taxation, law enforcement, and administrative systems that reveal how deeply these organizations have penetrated Mexican society. Former cartel members describe being assigned to interrogate new prisoners, conduct surveillance, and maintain organizational discipline from within supposedly secure facilities. The systematic betrayal that cartel members experience reveals the true nature of organizational loyalty. Cartels maintain control through manipulation and abandonment rather than genuine mutual support. The promises of legal assistance, financial support, and organizational protection prove hollow when members are arrested or injured, leaving them to face consequences alone while the organization continues to exploit their external networks.
When I arrived in prison, obviously they promise you the stars, that they're going to get you out, that they're going to help you, that they're going to continue on supporting you. Obviously those are all lies. What they want is basically they want you to put whoever you have out there that is loyal to you as a person because they know who you are, keep them working for their organization.
Violence inside Mexican prisons reaches levels that shock even experienced cartel members, revealing institutions that have completely abandoned any pretense of state control or human rights. Prison riots become grotesque spectacles of violence where human heads are used as sporting equipment, demonstrating the complete breakdown of civilized norms within these facilities. The psychological toll of sustained cartel membership eventually breaks down even the most hardened individuals, leading to existential crises that can only be resolved through complete withdrawal from the organization or death. The material rewards of cartel life, money, drugs, women, and power, fail to provide psychological satisfaction, leaving members with profound emptiness despite their apparent success. As military pressure from the terrorist designation intensifies, these internal dynamics are becoming more volatile. The psychological bonds that hold cartels together are being tested like never before, creating opportunities for defection while simultaneously making remaining members more desperate and dangerous. The external war may be just beginning, but the internal collapse of these organizations could prove to be their ultimate downfall. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content.